Welcome to Moksa Workflow Manager Training movies. This is exercise number 8, in which I'm going to give you an explanation on the fine-tuning of approval and commission tasks. Some of the fine-tuning apply to both kind of tasks, both to approval and to commission. Your fine-tuning can be done in the global Cumulus client preferences, in the sites workflow manager.xml, in the category of the workflow itself, or on the individual task. At any level that you do it, it will automatically apply to anything that resides below. The top level is the client preferences, applies to everything in Workflow Manager. If you do it in the sites workflow manager.xml folder, it only applies to anything within that sites environment and overrules whatever you defined in the level above. Same goes for the workflow. If you do it in the category template, it will only apply to that workflow template and overrule anything that the two levels above had defined. And finally, in the task, the lowest level, if you set it up in the task, it will only apply to that specific task in that specific workflow template and will overrule whatever was set in the levels above. The first thing we're going to talk about is the workflow collection. In the previous exercise, we discussed the use of workflow collection in the workflow manager. Well, with these parameters, you can allow or not allow some extra functionalities in the workflow collection basket. That workflow collection basket is unique to the workflow task, and by default it keeps track of the files that were sent there from within the workflow. But you can also enable a feature that it allows you to upload inside the workflow collection. These parameters are global or individual to a task, so you could enable it for a workflow, which means it would be enabled for all the tasks, or you could specify it for one specific task. You can also enable or disable the possibility of removing assets from the workflow collection basket. By default it is set to false, but if you want it to be possible, you can specify this parameter to true. And you can also enable the possibility to show the comments. Any comments made in the past on the workflow task are still available inside that record and could in the workflow collection still be valuable for the user. If you want to be able to access those, you can click on that button to show the comments in the workflow collection task. By default, again, this is disabled. Let's first have a look how we can configure this in an individual task or in a workflow. For this example, we are going to start with a new workflow. So I'm creating a new category. I'm calling this Training 8 dash and then fine-tuning tasks. When you give a workflow a name, please remember not to use slashes, colons, semicolons, because those are used as separators and could further down the line cause trouble in the workflow. I've given it a proper name, and now I'm not going to start this from scratch. I'm going to actually copy from another training movie that we used in workflow training exercise 4. So I'm open the workflow graphic for this workflow, and instead of starting from scratch, I'm going to load tasks. It's asking me to select from where I want to import, and I'm going to select this training movie. I'm going to load these tasks, and I have immediately a fully fledged working workflow. What do I want to personalize in this workflow? I want, for instance, to allow some functionalities in this particular commission task. So I can edit here, and I can personalize the information in here. Everything is already set up correctly. So in fact, I do not want to set anything, any functionalities. I want to change the permissions, and changing the permissions is actually done in the task itself. So the first task was a commission task, and this commission task is this one. So I want to go to the information window of that commission task. If you don't see these fields, don't forget to select the workflow record view set. If you don't have it, please check your installation. The set was provided and can be imported so that it is made available inside your installation. In the personalization of this task, we have a number of parameters, and we are actually interested at this point in the workflow parameters. The workflow parameters is what I want to personalize. So I'm going back to my documentation, and I want to provide the functionality of an upload. This gives you the possibility to upload in the task, so I want that to be available. And I also want the possibility to remove records from the task. Maybe when I upload something I can make a mistake, and in that case I want to be able to remove something from the task. So like this, and I'm adding this here. Another thing not to forget is that I have to change that into true. So this now brings me to a very interesting other feature of the approval and the commission task, is the fact that you can set a target duration of the task. By default, as soon as the task starts, this task can go on indefinitely. It will never stop, and it will never notify you about the fact that this task has not been performed. You can specify here in the target duration of the task a number of days that this task can take. If it's set to 0, then it will never end. There is no target duration of this task. But if you set this to, for instance, 1, then you are talking about this task has to be finished today. Whenever it is started, today is today. If you decide that you want to it to be finished tomorrow, then you can set it to 2. That means start date of the task plus 2. So today and tomorrow. So that's how you can build in a safety that the task will be performed on time. When that moment in time has passed, it will automatically send out an email to the participant remembering that his allotted time has been spent, that he needs urgently to finish his task. Optionally, if you specified an administrator for this task, this administrator will also receive an email getting notified about the fact that this task is delayed. In this example, we're not going to specify it, but you have the option to do that. Another functionality that I want to show is the ability to edit or not the additional info. By default, this is specified to true, so by default you are allowed to edit additional info fields. I'm going to play during the demo with this setting, changing it from true to false. So I'm going to add that functionality here in the first task of this workflow. I'm setting it to true by default, keeping the default, but later in the task I will, while we're running it in the second example, I will enable that feature. Same for deletion of instruction files. If an instruction file was provided, you can enable or disable the functionality to be able to delete that instruction file, and you also have the ability to enable or disable the possibility to upload new instruction files in a task. So when I go back into my workflow, I can specify here those two additional functionalities. So I can say I want you to be able to delete that, so I'm setting this to true, and I want you to be able to upload, so I'm setting this to true as well. Both are set to false by default. So these are actually some of the examples that I want to be able to test in this example. So I'm going to save my settings, and from this point on, for this template number 8, they will be available. Before continuing, I did not want to do this. If you make a mistake, select it and just click on delete. Otherwise, it will not be visible. Now, at this point, it would this workflow would not be visible because we haven't enabled it yet for the portal template. So I check this, and from this moment on, it will be enabled. Should you want these extra functionalities that we just described, the permissions that we added to the individual commission task, if you want them to be valid for the whole workflow, you should have added them here, and they would apply immediately to all tasks in this workflow. I'm ready to run this workflow now, so I'm going here to my workflow portal. I log in. In the workflow portal, I get automatically training number 8. I select it. I get the standard interface that we are used to. I'm going to this part, and I'm selecting the user, and here please create design, and I'm going to provide an extra document in the workflow, a style guide maybe, and now I can save this. The task is ready to be executed. The workflow is ready to be executed. So if at this point I close this, and I can log out, and I can wait for the email to come for the first person in the workflow to be notified to perform his or her task. I'm clicking here to see if the mail has arrived, and there it is. I open my mail, and I get the necessary information. I click on the link, and when I open the task, I can see the description of my task, and I have the ability to edit the workflow, which is kind of strange in this example because there are no tasks, no additional info to be edited. In a second I will change that. I have the ability here to upload a new file into the additional information, the additional instruction files, so I can upload it into the workflow, and after a few seconds I see it appear. And I enabled the possibility to delete something, so I click on delete, and automatically that style guide is now gone from the workflow. Another functionality that I have is inside my workflow, I can have an upload button here. I can browse for whatever file I want to upload. I select it. I can do the multi-file upload, of course, with dragging and dropping files in. And if I come back, I see that I now have this task, and I have the button that allows me to add or remove it from the task. So if I log out from this task and I make in the template a change and I would start a new template, I could change the behavior. I'm going to do it on the running workflow, which is something that you should not do, but it's just for the purpose of the example. I can go in here and I can say that I want here to allow an upload in the instruction. I can say no, I don't want to allow that, so now I'm putting this to false. If I don't want them to delete, I'm putting this to false. If I don't want them to edit the additional info field, I'm putting this to false. And if I don't want to allow them to remove, for instance, from the collection basket, I put this to false. And if I remove the label that I would have for the upload, so now I actually have almost disabled anything that I had enabled before. If I go to the mail and I open it again, if I had it configured that way, you see I can no longer upload, I can no longer delete, I can no longer edit, and I can no longer remove the file. I can only download. So there's lots of options that you can enable or disable in a specific task. Thank you for joining me in this example. In the next example, we will cover a login for the approval or commission tasks.